In 1847, on the banks of the Root River in Racine, Wisconsin, a three-story brick factory rose from the ground. This building would become the birthplace of one of America's most enduring industrial enterprises. The man behind it was Jerome Increase Case, and his Racine Threshing Machine Works would evolve through 177 years of American history, surviving wars, depressions, corporate takeovers, and the dramatic transformation of American agriculture itself. This is the story of the many lives of the Case Company. Jerome Increase Case understood opportunity when he saw it. In the mid-19th century, American agriculture was on the cusp of transformation. The country was expanding westward, and farmers needed machinery that could help them harvest the vast grain fields of the Midwest. Case's answer was the threshing machine. By 1848, just 1 year after opening his factory, Case was producing 100 threshers annually. But demand was fierce. Case himself claimed he was meeting only half of the orders he received. The young entrepreneur was tapping into something powerful: the mechanization of American farming. The factory itself evolved with the times. In 1854, Case made a significant upgrade, replacing the water power that had driven his factory machinery with a steam boiler and engine. This wasn't just about efficiency, it was about freeing the factory from the limitations of natural water flow and embracing the power of steam, the technology that was reshaping industry across America. In 1862, Case introduced the sweepstakes, a thresher capable of producing 300 bushels of wheat a day. This was a substantial leap in productivity. But the pressures of running a growing business during the Civil War were mounting. In 1863, Case made a crucial decision. He would no longer go it alone. He formed a partnership, establishing J.I. Case and Company with Messina Erskine, Robert Baker, and Stephen Bull. This partnership would prove essential to navigating the challenges ahead. The year 1869 marked a turning point. Case brought out what he promoted as a highly improved thresher, the Case Eclipse, a no-apron machine. But Case recognized something critical. To realize the full potential of this new thresher, he needed more power than horse treadmills or sweeps could provide. His solution? Steam engines. In 1869, Case introduced his first portable steam engines. Over the following decades, an astounding 36,000 of these machines would be built to power American farm implements. These weren't fully self-propelled machines. A team of draft animals was still necessary to pull the steam engine from job to job, but they represented a quantum leap in available power for farming operations. By 1878, Case had developed its first steam traction engine, a machine that could move under its own power. Within a year, the company had sold 109 of them. Sales were doubling. By 1880, the company reached a milestone: $1 million in sales. That same year, the partnership was formally incorporated as the J.I. Case Threshing Machine Company. But even as the main company flourished, a complicated chapter was unfolding next door. In 1876, a plow works had been established by Ebenezer Whiting with financing supplied by the man himself. Initially known as Case, Whiting and Company, the factory was located right next to the Case Threshing Machine Company. When mismanagement led to financial troubles, Case bought out Whiting and renamed the firm J.I. Case Plow Works. The year before Jerome Case died, he made his son Jackson president of the plow works. For several decades, the two entities operated smoothly side by side. But as Case Threshing Machine Company expanded its production of steam engines, the company was inevitably drawn into providing plows for those engines, plows branded with the name Case. This created a problem. Two separate companies, both using the same name, both making agricultural equipment. What followed was a series of bitter lawsuits. Finally, the Wisconsin Supreme Court issued a decision. Jerome Case Plow Works was given exclusive rights to brand plows with the name Case, while Case Threshing Machine Company was allowed to use the name on all products except plows. It was an awkward arrangement that would cause confusion and animosity for decades. In 1891, Jerome Increase Case died. Leadership of the Threshing Machine Company passed to his brother-in-law and former partner Stephen Bull, who was assisted by his son Frank. Under their guidance, between 1893 and 1924, the company expanded internationally, reaching Europe, South America, and Australia. The early 20th century brought dramatic changes to American industry and agriculture. The Case Company was about to embark on ventures that would have seemed unimaginable just decades earlier. In 1910, the J.I. Case Threshing Machine Company made a surprising move. It purchased the Pierce Motor Company of Racine. Pierce had been manufacturing the Pierce-Racine automobile, which had no connection to the better-known Pierce Arrow. Case renamed the automobile simply Case and utilized its 8,000 dealers and agents worldwide to sell the new line. Case automobiles came in touring models, sedans, coupes, and a few sporting types in the luxury class. For more than a decade, Case was not just a farm equipment manufacturer, but an automobile maker. The company continued building automobiles until the mid-1920s before finally exiting the car business. But the real transformation in agriculture wasn't happening with automobiles. It was happening with gasoline tractors. Since 1902, numerous firms had been racing to produce gasoline-powered successors to steam-powered engines. The challenge was designing lighter, smaller versions that were practical for everyday farm use. By the 1920s, the design and manufacture of these lighter, more nimble gasoline tractors had made Case a major player in the market. In 1919, Case acquired Grand Detour, a tillage equipment company. This acquisition, combined with its existing product lines, transformed Case into a full-line manufacturer by the late 1920s. But the two-Case problem remained unresolved. The declining Case plow works sold out to Massey Harris of Canada in 1928. Massey Harris immediately turned around and sold its rights to the Case name to Case Threshing Machine Company. After decades of confusion and legal battles, there was finally only one Case. The period following World War I brought economic depression to American agriculture, which severely impacted the farm equipment industry. The statistics are stark. By 1929, only 18 of the 157 farm equipment manufacturers operating 12 years earlier remained in business. Case survived, but not without struggles. The company had become complacent. While enjoying strong sales of its steam traction engines and threshers, Case had not kept up with competitors' improvements. In 1924, a new president arrived, Leon R. Clausen, who had left the John Deere Company to take the helm at Case. Around 1928, after reorganization, the company name was changed to J.I. Case Company, dropping the threshing machine designation. In 1927, the J.I. Case Company ceased building its legendary steam engines. Over 30,000 Case steam engines had been produced during their decades-long run. These machines were painted black with green machinery, while the new gas tractors were painted grey. It marked the end of an era. In 1929, Case introduced the Model L tractor. This wasn't a rushed product. The Model L had undergone rigorous testing for 4 years before it was introduced to the market. Elements of its design would be used in Case tractors for the next 20 years, proving the value of that extensive testing period. The company continued expanding its product lines through both invention and acquisition. Case purchased equipment lines that included binders, mowers, reapers, and corn planters. Then, in 1937, Case acquired the Rock Island Plow Company, adding drills, spreaders, and plows to its offerings. By the end of the 1930s, Case had survived the Great Depression and was positioned as a major agricultural equipment manufacturer. But the world was about to change dramatically once again. In 1939, Case made a decision that seems minor, but would become part of its identity. The company changed its color scheme from gray to flambeau red. That distinctive red would become synonymous with Case equipment for generations. When World War II began, demand for Case tractors surged. Between 1941 and 1945, more than 15,000 Case tractors went to the military. New tractors were designed and manufactured specifically with war needs in mind. But Case wasn't just building tractors during the war. The company was also producing shells, aircraft wings, and gun mounts for the war effort. The immediate post-war years should have been golden for Case. Instead, they revealed serious problems. Profits declined between 1950 and 1953, largely because of outdated products. In 1953, the production and sale of threshers, the very product that had started the company, was finally discontinued after more than a century. Competitors had introduced lighter models of tractors in the late 1930s, and these machines became increasingly popular after the war. Case, on the other hand, had at the end of the war roughly the same heavy series it had at the beginning. The company had failed to evolve with the market. Poor engineering hurt Case during the early 1950s. The company's hay baler, which had topped the market in 1941, had lagged to less than 5% of baler sales by 1953. Why? Because Case had failed to respond to a competitor's improvements. There was also a troubling tendency within the company to blame dealers for poor sales rather than examining the products themselves. All of these problems pointed to a crisis in leadership. President Leon R. Clausen consistently made decisions opposed to change. He opposed diesel engines for domestic sales. He believed farmers preferred dependability over changes such as a foot-operated clutch, a cab, and an oil filter, all features that a 1946 survey of farmers had specifically requested. When Clausen left the presidency in 1948, Theodore Johnson took over. But the company continued to drift, with a lackluster response to competition and no notable innovations. Johnson was replaced in 1953 by John T. Brown. Brown's arrival marked a dramatic shift. Under his direction, Case released a multitude of new or improved implements, including the 500 series tractor, which would become a popular line. The 500 featured a six-cylinder, fuel-injected diesel engine, power steering, and a push-button start. It was exactly the kind of innovation Case had been missing. In 1956, two new manure spreaders were unveiled. But that same year, Case reported its second loss since 1953. For the first time in its history, bankruptcy seemed like a real possibility. Diversification appeared to be the only remedy. Case launched its industrial equipment line in 1957 as though it were entirely new, though the company had actually been making industrial units based on agricultural models for 3 decades. Case applied itself to expanding this sector and turned to Caterpillar Company for marketing assistance. To revitalize its industrial line, Case acquired American Tractor Corporation in 1957. A TC had about $10 million in volume at the time of purchase, but was heavily in debt due to recent rapid growth. What it brought to Case was invaluable. A vigorous president named Mark Bory Reutemann, a strong network of distributors and dealers, and a sturdy line of crawler tractors and loader backhoes, particularly the loader backhoe, which was the company's star product. Under Reutemann's leadership, Case's manufacturing capacity improved, new retailers were attracted, and the company moved confidently into the construction equipment business. Reutemann had a showman's personality and organized dazzling regional shows to promote new product lines. The results were dramatic. Sales rose 50% in 1957, reaching $124 million. Income the following year more than tripled. But Reutemann's aggressive expansion strategy created enemies. Leon Clausen, still head of the board, strongly opposed Reutemann's presidency and his debt load. Clausen resigned in 1958. Then an economic downturn that same year left the company in a precarious position. William Grade replaced Reutemann in 1960. By 1959, Case's debt load had reached $236 million. The company had become the country's 4th largest farm and construction equipment producer, but it was financially stretched thin. In 1962, unable to meet a $145 million bill due on short-term notes, Case negotiated a bank agreement that called for reorganization and the deferment of most interest payments until 1967. This would allow the company to focus on paying down principal. The reorganization included the ousting of Greed. He was succeeded by Merritt D. Hill, who had previously worked in Ford's tractor and implement division. Hill brought talent with him from Detroit, including a chief product engineer, and completely restructured Case. Money constraints made it difficult to develop new product lines, but Case managed to stay competitive with rivals like Ford and Deere. In 1964, Case introduced the 1200 Traction King, a four-wheel drive, 120 horsepower giant that marked the company's entry into the large agricultural tractor market. It was a statement that Case was back in the game. Then, in May 1964, something unexpected happened. The Kern County Land Company of California acquired majority stock in Case. Kern County Land had been founded in 1874, beginning as a cattle-raising venture that had branched into petroleum royalties after oil was discovered on its land. The company was cash-rich and agreed not to dictate Case's growth or internal decisions. These circumstances allowed Case to expand between 1964 and 1967 in accordance with booming demand for existing products and the drive to produce new ones. By 1966, Case's income decline had been reversed. Hill became chairman of the board and Charles A. Anderson became president. The Case Company, which had nearly collapsed just a few years earlier, was thriving once again. But stability would prove elusive. In 1968, the corporate landscape shifted again. Kern County Land Company, under threat of a hostile takeover by Arm & Hammer, sought a friendly buyer instead. The company that acquired Kern County Land, and with it, Case, was Tenneco Company of Houston. This marked the beginning of Case's life as part of a larger corporate entity. In 1968, Tenneco acquired Drott Manufacturing Company in Wisconsin and leased it to Case. Case had been buying loader buckets from Drott for years, so the acquisition made strategic sense. A significant shift occurred around 1970. Case essentially exited the farm implement business. The company that had started with threshing machines was now focusing primarily on tractors and construction equipment. In 1972, Case dropped its combine business entirely. It seemed like the company was leaving agriculture behind. That same year, 1972, Case made another major acquisition. David Brown Ltd., a British agricultural equipment firm that had been founded in 1860. Brown had a large distribution system in Britain, and Case concentrated its small tractor production there. This acquisition gave Case a foothold in European markets and access to established distribution networks. Thomas Gwendell took over as company president in 1972 and commanded what would become a chapter of unprecedented growth. During the 7 years he led Case, sales quadrupled and earnings improved more than 600%. This phenomenal growth was due largely to increased success in construction equipment and overseas markets. Case was finding new life in sectors beyond traditional American agriculture. Case started the 1980s with 28,000 employees and what appeared to be strong momentum. But the company did not anticipate the recession that would devastate the farming community. New general-purpose tractors had been introduced in 1983 and were languishing on dealer lots. 4 more 94 series tractors were unveiled in 1984, but by that point, American farms were in genuine crisis. Case cut production to 55% of capacity, and it still exceeded demand. The financial results were brutal. In 1983, Case lost $68 million. In 1984, the deficit climbed to $105 million. The farm crisis of the 1980s was pushing Case back toward the brink. Then came a merger that would redefine the company entirely. In 1984, Tenneco bought International Harvester's agricultural equipment division and merged it into Case. International Harvester had been one of Case's oldest and fiercest competitors. Now the two were one. The farm equipment brands were combined as Case YH, though the corporation legally remained the J.I. Case Company. This merger brought together 2 storied American brands, each with deep roots in agricultural history. For Case, it was both a rescue and a transformation. The company gained International Harvester's product lines, dealer networks, and manufacturing facilities. But it also meant absorbing a struggling division during one of the worst agricultural downturns in decades. In 1986, when Case IH bought out Steiger, a manufacturer known for its massive 4-wheel drive tractors, the company continued the Steiger branding. This was a pattern that would define the modern era. Case would survive not as a single entity, but as a collection of brands under common ownership. The corporate structure continued to evolve. In 1994, Tenneco divested Case as the Case Equipment Corporation. Case Equipment became Case Corporation and later Case LLC. These weren't just name changes. They reflected the company's ongoing struggle to find its place in a consolidating industry. The final transformation came in 1999. Case LLC merged with New Holland Agriculture to form CNH Global, a division of the Fiat Group. It was a stunning development. The American company, founded in 1847, was now part of an Italian conglomerate. CNH Global would later be demerged into a corporation majority owned by Fiat Industrial. But the Case name didn't disappear. Instead, it lived on in two distinct brands. First, there's Case CE, construction equipment, which became the world's third largest brand of construction equipment. This represents the industrial and construction business that Mark Borry Reutemann had pushed so aggressively in the 1950s. That diversification, which had seemed like a desperate move at the time, had evolved into a major global brand. Second, there's Case YH, which became the world's second largest brand of agricultural equipment. This brand represents the merger of Case and International Harvester, two companies that had competed for over a century before joining forces. Case IH continues to manufacture tractors, combines, and other farming equipment sold around the world. In 1985, Case had returned harvesting equipment to its product line after dropping combines in 1972. This return to its roots, combined with the International Harvester merger, ensured that Case would remain a major force in agriculture even as the industry consolidated dramatically. Today, 177 years after Jerome Increase Case built his three-story brick factory in Racine, Wisconsin, the company exists in a form he could never have imagined. It's no longer independent. It's no longer purely American. It's been bought, sold, merged, divided, and reconstituted multiple times. But the Case name endures. It's on construction equipment working on job sites around the world. It's on tractors working farms from Iowa to India. That distinctive flambeau red, adopted in 1939, is still visible in fields and on construction sites everywhere. The story of the Case Company is, in many ways, the story of American industry itself. It's a story of innovation and complacency, of bold risks and near-fatal mistakes. It's about the transition from steam to gasoline to diesel, from horses to horsepower, from regional manufacturer to global brand. Jerome Increase Case built his company on a simple insight. Farmers needed better machines. For 177 years, through multiple lives, multiple owners, and multiple near-death experiences, that fundamental mission has persisted. The machines have changed. The ownership has changed. The name has been hyphenated, merged, and subdivided. But somewhere on a farm or a construction site today, a red Case machine is working. And in that sense, Jerome Increase Case's legacy continues, transformed but unbroken, 177 years after it began on the banks of the Root River. The Case Company has lived many lives, and in its modern forms, Case CE and Case YH, it lives still.